Welcome to Awaken to Wellness with me, Angela Taylor. This show is about building the bridge from addiction to restoration. Are you or someone in your family struggling with addiction? I want you to know addiction does not define a person, doesn't define you if you are that person. A life of sobriety can be achieved. Join me in the fight against addiction and the journey of restoration. Let's learn the truth about the disease, how you can offer inspiration to those in recovery, recognize those who need treatment, and how to reach out for help. Let the information we go over here on Awaken to Wellness be your mechanism of hope, your voice of grace, and an accelerated pathway to restoration. Are you ready to take that next step? Awaken to Wellness starts now. Welcome, everyone, to Awaken to Wellness with me, Angie, the bridge from addiction to restoration. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am your host, Angie Taylor, and I have a great show lined up for you today. But I want to start this show out, first of all, by saying that this is my very first show, and I am super excited. I first of all want to thank God for the opportunity, and I want to thank my producer, Moxie, for working so hard to get me ready for this moment. So since I've said that, I'm going to go into whatever we're going to be talking about today. So today on this show, we're going to be talking about something that may be a little hard and difficult for many people to talk about. If you're listening today, it may be a very sensitive subject for you, but we're going to talk about it, because if we can't talk about it, then we can't do anything about it. So today's show is going to be on a disease called addiction, and I call it a silent pandemic. And later on in the show, I'm actually going to go over why I call that a silent pandemic. So today we're going to be talking about addiction. And I know that many families are dealing with addiction. If you're listening to me today, you may be the person that's addicted, or you may love someone who's addicted to some type of drug, substance, or addiction. They can even be behaviors too. But today we're going to be talking about substance abuse. And so I know that this is hard, because it used to be hard for me, because I've dealt with this too. Growing up, my parents had an addiction, and even in my adult life, going through my marriage, we've battled addiction. So it was a difficult subject for me to talk about, but it's not anymore, because I'm educated and I understand it more. And my goal today is to get you to that very point. If you're at that point in your life where it's hard for you to talk about it, you're ashamed to talk about it, you've been hiding it, you're just embarrassed, then my goal today is to get you to not be. And once you can talk about it, and once you're not embarrassed to talk about it, then that's the only time you can really do something about it. So hopefully after we finish today, then you'll have a good feeling about speaking out about your addiction. And that's the only way we're going to be able to help. So I just want to get us started today by asking one question. Are you or someone you love fighting an addiction? Just about in every family, I know that there's at least one person that you know in the family, or you may have a friend that has someone in their family who's dealing with it, but a lot of people are struggling with addiction today. So if you are that one that's struggling with an addiction today, or if you are the family member of a person who's struggling with addiction, you may be the spouse you may be a husband or a wife that's dealing with an addiction, or you may have siblings that are dealing with an addiction, or you may be a parent and you may be a child who's dealing with addiction, or you may be a child and a parent is dealing with addiction. But addiction is something that I think it's grown, and it's growing bigger and bigger and bigger every day. That's why I call it a silent pandemic, because it's the one thing in our nation that's a crisis. And because it is a crisis, that means that it's growing. But it's the one thing that people are so reluctant to talk about. People who are dealing with addiction, they don't want anybody to know. Or people who are dealing with someone who has an addiction, They don't want anybody to know. But today we're going to hopefully break that cycle because you're going to learn some truths about addiction. You're going to listen to some facts and some real things on addiction, and hopefully you'll be more educated and you will be better able to join in the fight with addiction, and you'll be better able to help your loved one deal with it too. So that's my goal for you today. So I asked you a question a few minutes ago. Are you or someone you love fighting an addiction? It doesn't matter what the substance is, how long, what the drug is. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, how long they've been doing it. It really doesn't matter. Do you know someone? If your answer to this question is yes, I am so glad you are tuned in to this show today. And I want you to stay right there because we're going to say some things that will hopefully help you to come out of isolation, come out of hiding, be ready to face the addiction because there's nothing too hard for God. I just want to make sure you understand that. And addiction, you can be healed from it. I want you to know that you don't always have to be where you are. If you're dealing with it or you love someone who's dealing with it, it doesn't always have to be this way. Okay. So there is hope, there's healing, and there's restoration. And we're going to take that journey today to see how we're going to get there. So I want to say three things to you. If you did answer yes to that question that I just asked you. First of all, you're not the only one. A lot of times when we're dealing with someone with an addiction, or we have the addiction, or if you have the addiction, or if you're an individual who has it, you kind of feel like you're the only one. That's where the I don't want anybody to know comes in. But you're not the only one dealing with this. There are people dealing with this all around the world. Doesn't matter whether it is a prescription drug or a street drug. An addiction is an addiction. So you're not the only one. Okay. Another thing I want to say to you right now, I said I want to say three things. That was just one. If you are the one with the addiction, or if you love someone who is an addict, don't feel like you need to isolate. Okay. There is no need to hide an addiction. Actually, if you hide it, it will grow bigger than you. And sooner or later, you won't be able to hide it anymore because it'll just grow. And sooner or later, people will know. So you can only keep it hidden for so long. And I don't want you to keep it hidden because when you do, you won't get the help you need because there's treatment for it. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. You know why? Because it is a real disease. Addiction is a disease, just like cancer, just like heart disease, just like diabetes. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. You didn't choose it. It chose you. You didn't cause it. And for the family members of those who are addicts, they don't want to be this way. They didn't ask to be addicted to anything. It's not anything they caused. I know in today's society, society wants to make it seem like the person has control over the addiction. Without treatment, there's no control, and they really don't have control over it, you know? So there's no need to feel guilty about it because when you feel like that and you isolate, you're only holding yourself back from the healing that God has promised to you. He promised us healing, and there is treatment for an addiction. So recovery is possible. So you're not the only one. And if you are the addict, or if you love someone who's an addict, you don't have to be embarrassed about it. Addiction is a chronic illness, just like cancer and everything else. But sadly, our culture has identified addiction as a moral failure, but this is so far from the truth. So there's nothing wrong with your loved one. Your loved one isn't crazy just because they're addicted to something. It doesn't mean they're crazy. It doesn't mean they're less than. It doesn't mean you need to throw them away. It doesn't mean you need to treat them like an outcast. Actually, those things sometimes kind of makes the situation worse. It's not going to help the addiction by doing those things. But I'm not judging because I've made a lot of mistakes too in the past because I didn't understand addiction. I did the best I could with it, but I made a lot of mistakes with it. And so I'm trying to now be a voice to help people not make the same mistakes I made. because I didn't understand what addiction was. I didn't know that the person couldn't control it. I didn't know that it wasn't a matter of willpower. I didn't know that. I didn't know it was a real illness. I didn't know that it was a real diagnosis and it's not called crazy. So, another thing I want to say is this: addiction is not your fault. And you did not fail if you're the one with the addiction. And if you are the parent of a child who's addicted to something, because I know now, if you look at the news every day, you're always seeing on the news about some high school child or teenager who has struggled with fentanyl, died of fentanyl, has a fentanyl crisis going on, or it's everywhere. It's everywhere. If you are a parent, and I want to say this to the parents, if you are a parent who you're dealing with a child who has an addiction, and not just the fentanyl, we got a lot of teenagers who are alcoholics. I'm going to give you some facts that I got off of, I got from the addictioncenter.com. And I want you to go there when you get a chance. You'd be amazed at some of the numbers you see and some of the, and we're going to talk about some things today too. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we are going to be discussing the top 10 addictions. So just stay tuned because you'll be shocked as to know what the number one addiction is. And I'm going to start from number 10 and I'm going to work my way all the way down. But I just want you to know that addiction is not your fault and you did not fail. If you're a parent, you didn't fail. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. If you have a child that's addicted to something, if you're the spouse of somebody, if your husband or your wife is addicted, if whatever the situation may be, that's not a reflection on you. You didn't cause the addiction. You can't control it. It's not a reflection on you. I used to think the same thing. You know, my husband is in recovery. And I used to think back in the day, before I learned better, that his struggle or his addiction, because we can't be ashamed to call it what it was, but his struggle with that was a reflection on me. So I hid in shame and embarrassment because I did not understand that this was a real illness. And I made a mistake too, thinking that it was something that he could control. You know, I thought it was a matter of willpower. I didn't know. I did the best I could. But can I tell you something? I made so many mistakes. I did some things that I am still trying to forgive myself just because I didn't understand. But I just want to say this: God is a God of reconciliation. I just want to say that He's a God of restoration. He's a God of reconciliation. And I just want you to know today that my husband and I have reconciled and we're living our very best life. And it doesn't mean that we still don't struggle with addiction, but it just means that we've allowed God to take control of that. And we've educated ourselves on what it is. And so we've totally turned our perspective on that. We have a whole new perspective. Now we know better and we're able to tackle the problem better. So that's why I say you're not the only one. Addiction is not your fault. Mom is not your fault. Husband is not your fault. Wife is not your fault. Sister, brother is not your fault. Your loved one did not fail. Okay. Your loved one did not fail you. They have a problem. They have a sickness. You did not cause this addiction. Neither did they. Nobody wants to be addicted to anything. Who in their right mind, and God created us with brilliant minds, okay? Who would want to do something that would bring negative and continues to bring negative consequences to themselves? Who would do that? Who would intentionally try to hurt their family, the people that love them? Who would constantly just do that on purpose? You got to know your loved one better than that. You got to. Recovery and healing is possible. That's what I want to say. And you can go on to live a life of wellness, purpose, and hope. Families can stay together. Now, I know it gets a little rough, and we're going to talk about that. But addiction doesn't have to break you. It doesn't have to break your marriage. It doesn't have to break your families. But when we don't understand it, it can definitely do that. It destroys families. It's claiming lives everywhere. And it continues to do that. It continues to do that each and every day, everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Okay. So we're going to go on and talk about, I told you I was going to tell you about the top 10 addictions, okay? So, the top 10 addictions, and I'm going to start from number 10, and I'm going to try to breeze through them, but we're going to talk about the top 10 to let you know that you're not the only one. And if we don't get a chance to finish these before the break, we're going to come back and continue those. But for right now, we're going to start with number 10. Number 10 on the list of the top 10 addictions are, you ready? Barbiturates. These are like your sleeping pills. This category is like your sleeping pills. So, yes, people become addicted to sleeping pills. And this is just one of those things. It may be in your medicine cabinet right now. Just know that this is number 10. Your number 9. Your number 9 is I gotta say this right, benzodiazepine. Okay. And this is going to be your Valium and your Xanax, your Ativan. Number 8, your stimulants. These are your stimulants. Okay. This could include your Adderall all the way to the street drug called meth. Okay. Number 7, you want to know what that is? Heroin. Now, I don't have to explain to you what that is. You already know. Okay. Number 6, you want to know what number 6 is? Number 6 is cocaine. Okay. Number 6 is cocaine. So I want to say this. Sometimes people look at people who smoke cocaine or heroin or meth, and they think that these are the worst drugs on the market, or these are the worst drugs to be addicted to. But addiction is addiction, whether it's sleeping pills or whether it's meth. And addiction is an addiction. Okay. So that was number 6. Okay. We're going to go on to number 5. Number 5 is inhalants, things that you sniff. Number 7, on the top 10 addictions, right? And did you I also want to say this? These are the top 10 since COVID, since 2020. All right. Number 4 on the list, opioids, right? I want to say something about that because that was a crisis too. Now it's fentanyl, but the opioid crisis is still going on. In 2020, 1.1% of Americans aged 12 or older had an opioid use disorder. Did you hear that? Age 12. Number 3. You want to know what number 3 is? Now, this is going to shock you. It shouldn't, but it might. Marijuana. Yep, Mary Jane. Mary Jane is still an addictive drug, but I know because most people have legalized it. They probably feel like, oh, it's okay, but marijuana is still considered an addictive drug, and it's number 3 on the top 10 list of common addictions. Yeah, so for all you who like to roll up, marijuana is still addictive. I just want to say that. Just want to say that. Just want to bring that out. Number 2, nicotine. Nicotine has been around a while, but nicotine is still the number 2, is number 2 on the top 10. And I started from 10 going all the way down to number 1. And number 1, do you want to know what number 1 is? Yep, you got it. Alcohol. Alcohol is the number 1 most common addiction in the nation today. Okay? So with that being said, you now you can see that addiction is a major problem in our nation. And the reason why I say it's a silent pandemic is because nobody wants to talk about it. And the people who are addicted, maybe most of them just don't want anybody to know. But we have to break the silence. So I'm going to ask you something. We're going to take a quick break here. But before we do, I want to ask you a question. Do you know somebody who's addicted? Is there someone who has come to mind since you've been listening to the show? Who is it on your heart right now? Who is it? Do you have an addiction? Are you the one? Are you a spouse, a parent, a sibling, or a child of someone who maybe has an addiction? Are you tired of feeling maybe burdened or confused as to how to help the person, or you don't even know what the next steps are? Think about that. Are you heartbroken, exhausted because you love someone who's struggling with some type of addiction? I know the struggle. I was exhausted too. Don't go anywhere. I want you to stay right there. Okay? because after we return from the break, we're going to go over some of these same questions. And then we're going to start talking about the emotional effects, the emotional turmoil that an addiction can have on families. Okay. This is Awaken to Wellness with Angela, which is me. I'm a certified professional and recovery coach. And if you want to learn more about what I do, you can go visit my website. My website is awaken number two wellnessandrestoration.com. And you can see more about some of the programs and services that I offer. And there's a contact page there too. So if you want to reach out, if you need some of those services, or you know somebody in your family, I just asked you a couple of questions. If you know somebody in your family that needs help, and maybe you want to go on there and submit a contact form, you can. But please remember to join me after the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back, and then we're going to talk about how families, how the emotional impact that addiction can have on families. We'll be back soon. Thanks. See you later. And this is Awaken to Wellness with Angie. I'm a certified professional life and recovery coach. And remember, to learn more about me, please visit my website, awaken number two wellness and restoration.com. Sorry. Now, before the break, I asked you a few questions, and I want to go back to revisit a few of those questions. Now, I know that addiction is can be a very emotional subject for a lot of you, because it used to be for me, and it still is at certain times. But I understand it now. And so it's made it easier for me. And I know that education is always the key to restoration as well. Because if you're not educated on something, then there's no way for you to make good choices, or good decisions, not informed decisions anyway. And you'll make a lot of mistakes like me when you're dealing with someone who's struggling with addiction. So it's important that I educate you as much as possible, and to let you in on some of my personal life experiences, some of the hard lessons that I've had to learn because I didn't understand addiction either. Okay. So we're going to start this segment of the show off by saying that, remember, addiction is a family disease. So do you know anybody? Are you the person addicted? Are you a parent, a sister, even a friend of someone? Because you love who you love, right? It doesn't have to be a member of the family for you to love them. So do you love anybody who's suffering with an addiction? And if you love them, you suffer with them. Trust me, I know. One family member's substance abuse or addiction affects the entire family. There's no way that you cannot be affected by someone's addiction. But if you are a spouse or a parent or a family member, you don't have to let it destroy your life, and it doesn't have to destroy your family. Now, I know that may not make sense to many of you right now, because most of the time, addiction does what? It does destroy the family. People have divorced because of addiction. Families have been split because of addiction. Children end up in CPS custody because of addiction. Family members have had to put their addicted family members out the house because of addictive the behaviors. Some family members have even lost. Some families have lost family members due to addiction. So yeah, addiction does destroy families. That's a fact. But it doesn't have to. That's a fact too. So anyway, we're going to go on and talk about that. And I know that addiction is a very emotional topic for some, because it's a very emotional time. Loving someone with an addiction, or watching somebody who is fighting an addiction, is an extremely emotional process. So trust me, I know what you're going through. I know it's hard. I know it seems easier to just throw in the towel, throw in your hands, let the person go, put them out there. You know, it's so easy to just try to wash your hands with it than to deal with it, because dealing with an addiction is hard. I get it. It is. When you're trying to do it alone. Let me say something. This is what I found in my experience, many, many years of experience dealing with addiction from my parents all the way up until my marriage. Anything is hard if you try to do it alone. See, addiction is also, it's very spiritual. And there's no way that anybody can really deal with any addiction without God. Now I'm going to get spiritual here. I'm sorry for all y'all there, but I got to get spiritual. With God, all things are possible. But you cannot deal with the disease of addiction without God. It won't happen. It can't happen. You can deal with it, but it probably is going to end up dealing with you if you don't. And that's where I found myself. When I was trying to deal with it on my own, when I was using going on, my own understanding of it. But remember, I didn't have a good understanding of addiction, but I made some very poor choices for me, for my husband, for my household, for my family, because I didn't understand. And I was trying to do it in my own strength. But when I had to give it to God. And it took me a while to get there. But it was when I understood what addiction was, when I understood the truth about it, and when I understood that I wasn't the only one, and when I understood that this was something that I couldn't control, my husband couldn't control, it was something that required treatment, it was something that required divine intervention. That's when it all started to make sense. And that's when they said, let go and let God. I had to stop trying to battle it on my own. And let me tell you something else. This is where we make the mistake too. Watch the people you talk to and get advice from. Because let me tell you something. If you've never driven a car, you can't show me how to drive one. And I said that to say, if somebody hasn't been in your shoes, a lot of people, we make a mistake when we allow people to try to give us advice. This is what you should do. This is what I would do. If you've never been in a situation where you've dealt with someone with an addiction, then you can't tell anybody anything about an addiction. So parents, spouses, if you're dealing with a family member who's an addict right now, be careful who you talk to about that, because someone who's never dealt with it, they really can't tell you anything. And a lot of people be like, this is what they probably say, girl, this is what I would do. Man, this is what I would do. They don't know what they'll do if they've never been in the situation. Okay. You don't know what you'll do. And they can't tell you what you should do because they don't know God's plan for your life. They don't know God's plan for the person, for the addict's life, the person battling the addiction. They don't know God's plan for their life. God got a plan for everybody's life, even the person with the addiction, even the person dealing with the person's addiction. Sorry, and get excited about that. But I'm just telling you the truth. Addiction is something that is very hard to explain, but I do know that it takes God. And you have to be careful the advice that you get, because some people will steer you wrong. And if they haven't dealt with it, they can't tell you. So what I've learned from experience is to be careful who you get advice from and be careful who you talk to, especially when it comes to an addiction, because a lot of people will tell you to leave the situation or turn your back on the person, when that's the very thing that God that may be the very thing he doesn't want you to do. So before you go to asking people, ask God. And there's nothing too hard for God. There's no situation too hard for God. But but we can handle addiction so wrong. And I'm not judging, because I've made plenty of mistakes. But look now that I understand, me and my husband are back together again. God put my family back together again. But addiction, I said, destroyed it at first because I allowed it to, because I tried to run from the situation. But you don't have to run from it. So like I said, don't isolate. There's help, there's restoration. You could be healed from addiction. There's treatment available, but you got to break the silence. You can't keep hiding it. Hiding it is only going to keep you away from your healing. It's going to delay your healing, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to let everybody know your business, but then you got to come out of that too in a way, because you got to let somebody know, hey, I'm suffering from this so that I can get help with this. I hope that makes sense to a lot of you, because I just don't want you to make the same mistake that I did. But addiction, once again, it can be heartbreaking and exhausting all at the same time. It wore me out. So I can tell you from my own personal experience, that turning your back on the person with the addiction or divorcing the person is not always the answer. And divorce is never the answer unless you're in a unsafe situation. But then again, you let the Lord lead you on that. Don't let people tell you what to do. You make sure that and God is never going to tell you to do anything that's against his word. So I just want to let you know that too. So anyway, addiction is difficult to navigate. I just wanted to let you know that. And when you don't understand it, it could be even more difficult to navigate. But the key to preventing this disease, because remember, that's what it is, from destroying your family, is to learn the truth about it. I want to ask you something, because I found myself in this situation a lot. And I think maybe many of you who may be listening to me may find yourself in this position, or you may have asked yourself this question or even thought this thought. But I think for many of us who have loved ones who have struggled with addiction, you may ask yourself this question. Have you ever thought this? If he or she really loved me enough, they would just stop drinking or stop using drugs. Have you ever thought that? Or what about this one? Have you ever believed at any point um, that if they love me, they would just stop? Or why do they keep doing this to me? Or why don't they see what this is doing to me? Won't they just stop? Why do they keep hurting me? No doubt. Watching somebody battle addiction, battle that with that, it hurts. But it hurts the person that's addicted too. And let me say this, they're not doing anything to hurt you. They're not doing it intentionally to hurt you. See, when you personalize it, that's the thing that makes you want to throw your loved one away. Oh, they're doing this to me. You're suffering with them because you love them, but they're not intentionally doing anything to you. Actually, they're hurting themselves. So let's change that mindset. They're not doing it to you. So don't be mad at them. Yeah, you can be hurt and be just and be upset about the things that they do, but you can't just throw them away. When somebody is going through or battling an addiction, the last thing you need to do is turn your back on them. And I know that sometimes it gets so bad, then you feel like that's your only way out, but it's not the only way out. But if you're trying to do it alone, that's the first thing you'll do is run, because that's what I did. But running is not the answer. And remember, a person can be healed from an addiction. And it's only when everybody in the family or everybody involved in the situation can really understand what addiction is and the truth about it, then we can work on a treatment plan. That's the key. That's the key. Okay, that's the key. So let's talk about some of the things, some of the types of treatments that are out there, because we're almost coming to the end of our hour. But I do want to talk about some treatments, or some treatment plans and some information that's available if you're really wanting to deal with addiction, and or you're maybe you don't really know how to. Okay, there is an abundance of information available on disease. Okay, there's a bunch of information out there. Family members still sometimes struggle, regardless to how much information is out there. Some family members are still struggling to understand the cause of addiction. We really don't know the cause. We don't have to know the cause. There is hope. Recovery is possible. God is able. He's able to do exceedingly and abundantly more than you and I can ask or think, Addiction is too hard for you, but it's not too hard for God. So what we need to do is just realize that in order to deal with this is a God thing. This is a God thing. And I had to realize that too. It's a God thing. God can do anything. Addiction is not too big for God. It's not too hard for God. It's just not. So I just want to say this. Treatment options are available, and I'm just going to name a few treatment options out there. Okay, there are inpatient treatment facilities. There are outpatient treatment facilities. There are probably some in your area. Maybe get online and Google some outpatient treatment facilities in your community around you. 12-step programs, there are a lot of those. A lot of churches offer 12-step programs as well. So you definitely want to get on the internet and just Google some 12-step programs in your area. Get in the 12-step program. That'll be good for the entire family because you all can do those together. Al-Anon groups are good. I have joined some Al-Anon groups. They're very good. Most of your local churches will offer those. These are free programs. You don't have to pay for. Alcohol Anonymous groups, AA, you want to do that. NA, you want to do that as well. There's therapy. There's licensed counseling, and there's certified professional recovery coaching, like what I do. That's available as well. Okay. I want to say something. I'm going to share a scripture with you right now. And for those of you who are listening, like I said, you may be the person with an addiction. You may love somebody with an addiction. I just want to say this. God created you for a purpose. He created me for a purpose. And he has a plan for your life. Okay. I'm going to read Jeremiah 29:11. This is what the word of God says. And I'm going to share this with you. And I hope it resonates with you. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Nothing will stop God from fulfilling his plans for you, not even an addiction. Not even an addiction. This is just a part of the journey. And I know it may seem like a long journey. It's been a long, hard journey. Trust me, I know. Trust me, I know. It's a long, hard journey. But the person struggling with the addiction can't do it alone. They need the love and support of their family members. So, mom, if your child is the one that's addicted, that child needs you. I know it seems like they're rebelling all across the place. I know that they're doing things that you never thought they'd do. You raised him or her better than that. Yes, you did. But they didn't choose it. They didn't choose that. And it's nothing you did wrong. And they're not bad children. You're not bad. You're not a bad parent. That's just a part of their journey. And God is able to help with that. Wife, if your husband is the one with an addiction, leaving him is not the answer. That's not going to make it go away. Husband, if your wife, she needs your support doing this. Now, if you're in an unsafe situation and you're it's abusive and all that, then you do what you need to do to stay safe. But I'm just saying, if all that is not in the mix and it's just the addiction itself, a wife needs her husband needs the wife. If you're a marriage, don't let it break up your marriage. People who are dealing with an addiction, they need so much love and support. And they need the love and support of their loved ones, their family, their friends. And I know it gets hard to deal with them sometimes because sometimes they do some things that just make you want to wash your hands. But don't wash your hands. That's the opposite of what they need. They don't need you to enable them. They don't need you to act like the addiction doesn't exist because it does. But they need your love. They need your prayers. They need your support. They need you. They need God. So I hope by listening to the show today, I hope that I've said something to help. That was my goal. And I want to let you know also that recovery and restoration is possible, but this is all possible with God. So, yes, it does matter whether or not you have a relationship with Christ or not. And if I'm talking to you today and you are in a situation where you're dealing with a loved one who's addicted, or you're the person that's addicted yourself, then the real answer is Jesus Christ. Now, if you don't have a relationship with him, then this may not make sense. But you can always get a relationship with him. You can always get a relationship with him. You can start today and he'll pick you up from where you are, and he'll move you on to live a life that you never even imagined you could live outside of your addiction. And it doesn't matter how long you've been battling with this. Nothing is too hard for God, and it doesn't have to ruin your family. And not one more person has to die from an addiction. If you've been keeping it silent, say something. Reach out. Reach out to me. Reach out to somebody. Call some of these churches. I just gave you a number of treatment options that are available. And there are even treatment options that are available if you don't have insurance. If you need help with that, get in touch with me. Call me. But I do want you to know that restoration is possible. You can live a life of wellness. Families can come back to you. You all can reunite. Reconciliation is possible. Believe me, I know, I'm a witness. I didn't think so either. I didn't think so either. But God, that's all I have to say. So today, if you're the one that's struggling with this addiction, I want to say Jesus loves you, and you're not alone in your struggle. And if you love someone with an addiction, sometimes love is an addiction all in itself. It can be addicting too. But just know that it's nothing for you to be ashamed of. Their addiction is not a reflection on you whatsoever. It's nothing to be embarrassed about, because it's a sickness just like cancer, just like heart disease, just like anything else. Okay. And remember, you're not the only one. You're not the only one dealing with this. Okay. You're not the only one. And I hope that I've said something to encourage you today, to strengthen you today, um, to help today. And if you were thinking about, if you're married, if you were thinking that divorce was the only answer to this addiction, it's not. It's not. And if you don't understand it, then maybe it's time that you took some steps to put yourself in a recovery program to help you understand it and be better able to deal with it with your spouse or your loved one, period. Family. This is a family affair. This is a family affair. But just know that it can't be done without God. But with God, all things are possible. All things are possible. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in to Awaken to Wellness with me, Angie. I've enjoyed our show today, and hopefully that this really helped you. This really helped you. It even blessed me being able to share some of these things with you. So, once again, thank you so much for joining in to Awaken to Wellness and Restoration with me, Angie. If you want to know a little bit more about what it is that I do, please visit my website at Awaken two, that's number two, wellnessandrestoration.com. You can learn a lot about the services and the programs that I offer. And also, if you are one of those ones out there that's needing to talk more about your addiction, or you need help, or you just need to talk about it, or you're ready to come out about it, or you need help finding a treatment center, I want you to go to my website, go to the contact page. I want you to submit a contact form, and I will get back with you. Join me on the next episode. I'm going to have some juicy stuff for us to talk about again. My next show will air on March 27th, 2024. I hope that you will join me again. But until the meantime, take care of yourself. And that's the only way you're going to be able to take care of others. Have a good day, and thank you all for joining me. Goodbye. You have been listening to Awaken to Wellness with me, Angela, the bridge from addiction to restoration. Thank you for joining me in this fight against addiction. Tune in every fourth Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio for more ways you can offer healthy support to those in recovery, recognize those who need treatment, and how to reach out for help. Addiction is a disease, a silent pandemic that is claiming the lives of people now more than ever. For more information on what addiction really is and how you can help, visit www.awaken2wellnessandrestoration.com. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.